This is William Michael of the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, and today is Friday, October 1st. I'd like to talk a little bit today to homeschooling parents and offer some suggestions as to how they can make the best possible use of graded assignments in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. I believe that access to expert grading on written assignments is one of the most valuable benefits that we offer in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. The opportunity for students to submit daily written work to an experienced classicist for review and feedback is invaluable today and very rare. What I focus on in my review of student work is that the children are accurately learning and articulating the ideas of the classical Catholic curriculum. I'm primarily concerned with the ideas. It's the ideas, after all, that most parents will not be able to help their children with simply because they don't have experience in the classical Catholic curriculum. So, for example, when a young student submits a written assignment in a course like Aesop's Fables, I seek to make sure that the children are rightly understanding the philosophical lessons found in the fables. Making sure that the children grasp the ideas of the classical Catholic curriculum is my primary concern in grading written assignments. I like to use written assignments because it forces the student to articulate the ideas. It's one thing to select the right answer or enter a correct word in an online quiz, but it's something very different to articulate the answers in their own words on a written assignment. And really, the ideal assessment for lessons in the Academy will include both online quizzes and written assessments. And we'll get there little by little over time. The second reason, or the second thing that I look for in student assignments, the second thing I try to promote through my review of written assignments is that the students learn the proper level of effort that's required to study well. I use written assignments to teach students how to study and to set the standard for the quality of written responses that Catholic students need to provide in their academic work. So not only do I focus on the ideas of the classical Catholic curriculum, but I also use written assignments as an opportunity to teach students the standards in classical Catholic education. I don't allow students to get away with lazy answers. I don't allow students to get away with incomplete answers. I don't allow students to get away with vague, general, Catholic answers to questions that are seeking more specific information, more specific lesson-related content. And that kind of accountability is very important in the children's lives. And again, I don't believe parents can provide this kind of accountability. Those two focuses of my review of student work make written assessments very helpful for Catholic parents. I try to make the feedback on these assignments as prompt as possible. Right now, I'm returning student assessments, or I'm returning written assignments with grades and feedback within 24 hours, which I think is really important. And I hope that motivates the students to submit work knowing that it's going to be reviewed each night, and when they get up in the morning and open up their studies, they find yesterday's assignments graded with feedback. So that's what I provide through the review of written assessments. But what I'd like to talk about is how homeschooling parents can help their children through these written assignments. What can homeschool parents do to help their children through these written assessments? And notice I said through these written assessments, not on these written assessments. What I'm not saying is this is how parents should help their children to complete their written assignments. I'm not encouraging or asking parents to do the work for their children. In fact, teaching them to do their own work is more important a lesson than any actual content of any lesson. Teaching children to do their work is the most important lesson. I often catch my own children asking my wife for help, and it appears that they're being good in asking for help, and my wife will spend her time moving around from child to child, trying to help them with their questions. But I stop her, and I stop the children, and I tell the children to do their own work. First of all, I don't ask questions in assignments that students can't answer. I explain to the students how to study the lessons. You can see that in the article, How to Study for Mastery. If you haven't seen that article, you need to look it up. I teach the children how to study their lessons, and I ask them questions from the lessons that if they study, they should be able to answer. And so if a 13-year-old boy is sitting at the table in a homeschool and is constantly asking his mother to help him on his assignments, that boy is not doing his work. And parents need to be careful to distinguish between helping the children with their studies and being used by lazy children to do their work for them. The lazy academic spirit that's always seeking to do as little as possible and is always asking for help with every task is a spirit that needs to be put to death in our children, especially in boys. Boys have to be taught that they have to work and become independent, not only in their schoolwork, but in life itself. And parents can tell their children very clearly, Mr. Michael has said that there's nothing in your lesson that you should not be able to answer if you study. And I want to make sure parents know that I'm not giving these kids riddles or special tasks that require them to rely on their parents for help. I'm giving these students assignments that they should be able to complete on their own if they're following the instructions of how to study for mastery. So don't allow your children to make use of you to do their work for them. The lesson, the most important lesson that they need to learn is how to work independently, to take responsibility for their own studies, for their own learning, to follow instructions, and to work to complete their tasks independently. So I'm not asking parents to help their children complete their assignments. What I'm asking, or what I'd like to talk about, is how parents can help their children through written assignments. What I mean by this is that while the ideas and the content of the lessons in the classical Catholic curriculum will likely be beyond the reach of the parents' own learning and ability. That's my job. So I'm not asking parents to help their children with the content of their studies or to assess their work, to assess the ideas and content of their assignments. But there are very important lessons that need to be learned that parents can help with as their children complete written assignments. What parents should do is use the opportunity provided by their children's written assignments to teach their children all of the basic rules of writing, spelling, punctuation, capitalization, neatness, clarity, completeness, and so on. These are things that are within the grasp of all homeschool parents. And these written assignments should be used as opportunities for parents to teach these lessons to their children. So what I recommend is that the children not be allowed to submit their assignments until they've been looked at by the parent. What the parent should have the child do is read each answer aloud. Again, the parent is not seeking to assess the quality of the ideas in the responses or to judge the accuracy of the content of the student's responses. That's my job. What the parent should be seeking to do is to teach the child, first of all, to follow the instructions for the assignment. So, for example, on most assignments, the instructions say, after you have studied this lesson. So first of all, children should not be using comprehension questions as some kind of word search activity where they read a question and then go skim through the assignment to find the words or phrases in the question to try and find the answer. If that's what the kids are doing, they're not following the instructions, and it's going to cost them in the end. The instructions normally say, after you have studied this lesson. And that means, according to the method that I explain in that article, how to study for mastery. So the first thing parents need to check is whether the child has studied the lesson first. The student should have read the lesson. The student should have taken notes on the lesson. The student should have completed any memory work required in the lesson, and so on. Secondly, the instructions normally tell the children to answer all questions with complete sentences. Answer all questions with complete sentences. So if the question asks, what is the moral of this fable studied in this lesson? The answer should be, the moral of this fable is such and such, period. If the question asks, what is the subject of this lesson? The answer should be, the subject of this lesson is such and such. Students must answer the assignment questions using complete sentences. And every single answer to every single question on every single assignment is an opportunity for a student to develop his comprehension and composition skills. And every one of these answers has to be taken advantage of, because this is where the child learns to write clearly. We can't have 15-year-olds looking to write essays who have never learned to write sentences. And this is where that basic writing ability is to be learned. And so parents need to hold the children accountable for answering their assignment questions in complete sentences. And a good way to test whether an answer is written in a complete sentence is that the answer doesn't require the parent or teacher to go back and look to see what the question was. As I said with the example before, if the question is, what is the subject of this lesson? An answer written with a complete sentence reads, the subject of this lesson is such and such. If the answer is written in a complete sentence, anyone reading the answer will not need to go back and look at the question to figure out what the question was. The question should be contained in the response as it's written in a complete sentence. So that's a good test for how to check to make sure that the student has answered the question with a complete sentence. You should not need to go back and look to see what the question was. The question should be contained in the answer. So the first thing I ask is that you check to see that the student is following instructions and has studied the lesson before he attempts to complete the assignment. Second, I ask that you make sure the children are answering assignment questions with complete sentences and taking advantage of every opportunity to practice writing correctly and clearly. The third thing that parents should help with is looking at the children's writing. Making sure, first of all, that they are capitalizing the first words in their sentences, that they're capitalizing proper nouns, and that they're not capitalizing anything else. Children commonly misuse capital letters or fail to use capital letters, and this is something that parents can easily catch and focus on with their children. They can also focus on spelling, making sure the children are taking care to spell words properly. And there's no excuse for misspelling when the students are writing about topics that they're reading about and see the words spelled correctly in their lessons. There's no excuse for misspelling words. Parents should check to see that the children are capitalizing words correctly, that they're spelling words correctly, and that they're using punctuation correctly. One common error is children use apostrophes when they write plural nouns. So if they write birds, they'll write bird apostrophe S. That's a common error that children make. Writing run-on sentences with no punctuation is another common error that children make. If the child reads his writing out loud and he expresses different parts of the sentence and pauses at different points in the sentence, he needs to understand that those pauses and things that he does when he reads the sentence need to be marked in the sentence with punctuation marks, with commas, periods, and so on. Every sentence should have a subject and a verb, or subject and a predicate. And so basic grammar skills like these should be things that parents help their children with before they submit written assignments. And again, all of these things are within the ability of parents. This is especially true if parents lead their children through the Academy's English grammar classes, where the grammar is learned, and then the grammar can be enforced anytime the children complete written assignments. And this is a very, very important way that parents can help. It's something that homeschooling parents can really focus on. A homeschooling parent can say, well, look, I can't help my children answer questions about Aristotle's ethics because I've never studied it. And I don't want to mislead them by trying to influence their answers too much when maybe I don't really understand the answer to the question. So I'll leave the evaluation of the ideas to Mr. Michael, but I realize that there's another important aspect of these written assignments, which is just general grammar and writing skills. And those are the kinds of things that homeschool parents can help their children with that are most important. So simply reviewing the children's written work before it's submitted, making sure the children follow the instructions in the assignments, making sure the children are taking advantage of every opportunity to practice writing clearly and correctly, to make sure that answers are written in complete sentences, to make sure that words are capitalized correctly, that words are spelled correctly, that sentences are punctuated and marked correctly, that all questions are answered completely. These are the things that parents can and should do to help their children in their studies through the written assignments that I provide. Now, on my side, I'm going to hold the children accountable to these standards. I'm not going to accept answers that are not written clearly or in complete sentences. I'm not going to accept work that's full of grammatical errors. I'm simply going to return it to the students because it's not prepared for review. And these lessons are more important, they're greater priorities than the content of the lessons. So for example, there's no point getting into the details of Aristotle's ethics with a student who does lazy work. He's missing the whole point of the study of ethics. There's no point getting into the details of the Summa Theologica with a student who does not answer questions in complete sentences or who does not study first and then complete his assignments, or who does not take the time or make the effort to capitalize the words of his sentences correctly, or mark punctuation correctly, or read his answers aloud and make corrections before he submits his work. There's no point talking about the details of Catholic theology when a student is failing to understand the basic principles of etiquette and communication and responsibility in his schoolwork. And we want to focus on these lessons first, not pretend that they don't matter or say that all that matters is that you understand the ideas. That's not true. That's not true. We don't want to raise children who, quote unquote, understand the ideas, but then don't practice them. We want our children to learn good manners, good morals, good religion, and we want them to practice it. And for a 12-year-old boy, this is where he practices those moral lessons. For example, To write lazy, unclear answers and to submit them to someone to read is selfish and lazy. That's not Christian behavior. Christian behavior follows the golden rule: to do unto others what you would have them do unto you. So the child should ask or be asked, if you were the teacher, would you want a student to submit work like this for review? Half-written answers, incomplete sentences, sentences written that the student doesn't even take the time to read aloud and correct before he submits them? Would you like a student to submit work like that to you if you were the teacher? That's the golden rule. That's basic Christian morals. And that's why things like answering incomplete sentences, following instructions, following grammar rules, reviewing your work before you submit it, making sure your writing is clear, and things like that are essential moral lessons that need to be studied, practiced, and enforced. And so homeschool parents should realize how important this work is. Not of evaluating, as I said, the quality of the content of the children's answers to questions that relate to their lessons. That work can be left to me. But all of this preliminary work, following instructions, completing studies, answering questions in complete sentences, writing clearly, answering questions completely and carefully, typing correctly, spelling words correctly, capitalizing correctly, punctuating sentences correctly. All of these basic principles can be taught, checked, and enforced by homeschool parents. And they should consider that to be their responsibility, the part that they play in this process. Now for me, when I have to review hundreds of assignments in the evening, there's no way that I can deal with these basic issues. My way of dealing with these basic issues is going to give the assignment a 25% score, which is an F, and return it that the student may redo it and resubmit it. That's how I'm going to help with this part of the children's education. I'm simply not going to accept their assignments. And I'm going to force them to follow instructions and write clearly. And if a child can't write clearly, then I'm going to make him go back and study English grammar rather than try to take some academic course when he can't even write clearly yet. The study skills are the priority. They're more important than any academic content, any sciences. And so if there's a child who can't write clearly, who can't spell half the words in a sentence, I don't want to see him submitting work for sacred scripture or the Summa Theologica or Aristotle's Ethics or any other subject when he is failing grammar, which is more important. I would rather that student stop that course, go back and focus on grammar, and come back to that course when he's learned to write properly. That's the focus. Remember, we're teaching the classical liberal arts. The arts of study and communication are the focus of the curriculum. We're not falling for this modern delusion where kids are said to be smart because their heads are full of trivia, and yet their lives are filled with bad manners, bad morals, and all kinds of vices. And I'm talking about intellectual and personal vices. We're not seeking to raise these useless, smart kids. We're seeking to raise great students who are independent workers and who work with a certain quality and a certain concern for excellence, a certain level of responsibility and concern for others. And all of that is learned through their daily written assignments. And it's the part of the lesson that homeschool parents should be focused on. In my own home, with my own children, I make my children follow the same procedures that I make all other academy students follow. I don't give my children any advantages or benefits, and I do this for the sake of the whole academy, but also for the sake of my own children. I can hear through the house as I'm working what my children are asking my wife for help with, because my wife works with my children just like a homeschool mother would, and I can oversee or overhear what's going on, and I make sure that she doesn't help them with their actual work, but that she does oversee their work and help them with important lessons through those assignments. And my wife will be focused on the kids' writing, formatting of their typing, spelling, punctuation, capitalization, making sure all the questions have been answered completely, things like that. And I don't want my wife getting into the lessons with the children, because what the children will do is they'll read a question and then lazily ask for help. They'll say, "I don't understand what this question means." Well, that's because you have not studied the lesson. I don't want... Now, I'm not saying mom can't do this, but I'm saying I am not asking homeschool parents to sit down and read the whole lesson and help the kids, quote unquote, find the answers. That's not how these lessons are intended to be used. And frankly, you're not going to be able to continue that for long. Or the children's progress is going to be so slow in so few courses that they're really not going to get a good education. Helping them to become independent students is what will allow them to get the best possible education in the long run. Helping them to learn the discipline of true study is what will help them in the long run to get the best education they can. The longer they hang around mommy's neck and sit there while mommy looks for the answers for them, the longer they delay their beginning of independent studies. And I know that mothers may have good intentions, but doing the work for your children is simply delaying the beginning of their education. And it's a habit that parents have to watch out for, and refuse to help with. If a parent isn't sure of whether he or she should help the child with a question that the child has, what I recommend is that you not sit there and wrestle with this question yourself, but have the student go on the Academy forum and ask the question. Tell the student to go onto the forum, go onto the forum board for that subject area. If, for example, if he has a question about a history lesson, go onto the Academy forums, find the humanities board on the forums, and have the student write his question there on the forum. I will be able to easily discern whether the student is just being lazy and is trying to get someone else to do his work for him, or if there's a legitimate issue with the question or the answer being a little more difficult maybe than it should be. And I can answer the student's question if it's a just question and help not only the student but anyone else who has the question and goes and looks on the forum. But I can also catch the student when he's just being lazy, and I'll say so. I'm not going to be nasty, but I'll say on the forum, this is a question that you should be able to answer after you have studied the lesson carefully. So I'll be happy to make those distinctions for you if you simply send the student to the forum to post that question. And if you give me 24 hours, I'll answer that question for you. So that's how you should take care of an issue like that. So as a parent, once you have established this routine with your children, where they study the lesson, they follow the instructions in the How to Study for Mastery article, they take their notes as they're supposed to, they get used to the standard of what it feels like to study, how to attack a lesson, how to work through the lesson, how to know when you have finished studying a lesson. Helping them to learn that, then overseeing their work, completing their assignments, holding them accountable to basic moral standards, not being lazy, not being selfish, not making excuses, not asking others to do your work for you, and then focusing also on the quality of the children's actual work, not the content of the work, but the quality of the work. Once parents establish these standards, I think that as parents, you're going to be very excited because you're going to see measurable progress in these things. You're going to have a very clear sense of what your role is. And it's a very important role, very, very influential role. A role that has to be played by someone other than me because it's simply not sustainable to have me checking things like spelling and punctuation. But you're going to be happy because you're going to see the quality of your children's written work improve by holding them accountable in their assignments. I'm going to also reinforce those principles by keeping them accountable and sending back work that's not properly done. And then you're also going to be able to trust that the content of the lessons is also being reviewed and assessed and clarified as I assess the student work. So really, every student assessment is being run past two different sets of eyes that are looking for two different things. One, looking for basic work quality, general principles of study and writing, and the other set of eyes looking for the quality of the content of the writing in light of the lessons being studied. And working together like that, we can radically help the children in their studies. And as I said, while this may be a slow process to get started, and you should never be impatient when these processes are getting started, because as I said before, these lessons are the most important lessons. And if a student learns to work independently, to study for mastery, and to complete quality written assignments, he's going to be able to succeed not only in his studies in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, but in all future studies. And you're going to enable the child to work at a pace that allows him to make progress across many subjects and accomplish the greatest amount of work in his homeschooling years. So by working together in this way, we're going to enable the children to make the greatest possible progress and get the greatest possible education within the classical Catholic curriculum. So that's how parents, homeschooling parents, can significantly help their children, even if they are completely ignorant of the content of their children's lessons. There's no pressure on parents to answer the questions for their children. There's no pressure on parents to help their children find the answers to the questions. There's no pressure on parents to check the answers and judge whether they're correct before submitting them for review. The parent's job is to focus on the quality of work being completed. And that's something that all homeschool parents can do, and do well. So I hope that's a helpful guide to help parents clearly understand their role, not try to do more than they're asked to do, but to help their children in the best way possible, in a way that they truly can help their children, and I'd say in a way that only they can help their children. Now, if you have questions about this side of the work that I'm encouraging parents to take on as their responsibility, I'd like you to post questions that you have on the Academy forums, and let me provide more information, more specific instructions or examples to help you envision what you can and should do. Just post those practical questions on the Academy forums. And if you don't know about the Academy forums, just go to classicalliberalaarts.com/forums, FORUMS. Register an account on the forum, it's free, and post all of your questions on the forums. What happens is during the day, I'm usually recording lessons, publishing lessons, taking phone calls from all different kinds of people, just doing business work during the day. And then in the evenings, I sit down and I go through all the forum posts, I go through all of the submitted assignments, empty out all my to-be-graded folders, and get all of that work and all of those responses back to parents and students. So every morning you can expect to see those responses and those graded assignments, and we can get into a routine like this, and it's very pleasant. For example, my children wake up in the morning and run for their computers to look at their grades and to see what grades and feedback I've provided on all their assignments. They look forward to it in the morning, and they're eager to get to work, to see what their grades are, to see how many points they've earned, to see what comments I've left on their assignments. And then if there's an assignment where there were 12 questions and they had 2 wrong, they can quickly get to work on that assignment, fix the mistakes that they made, and resubmit it, and then move on to the next task in the course and things like that. So you can get into a really good and motivating routine with the kids once we get coordinated as parents and teachers. Once we get these things coordinated together, you can start to enjoy a good daily routine and develop an academic culture in your homeschool, which, again, in the long run, is going to allow for the greatest possible progress in studies. Most families that struggle with studies simply never establish these routines. They try with young children to get into academic content because they try to make them smart. They're worried about things like standardized tests and content of standardized tests. They never place a priority on basic skills and moral principles in education. And because they never establish the real foundation of true learning, while they may have some appearance of progress in the early years, and of course, we have the ubiquitous smart kid who is so smart when he's 5 years old because he knows all about Egyptian history, and he loves to study bugs, and he loves to talk about this and that, and he loves math facts. So these kids often never learn the basic skills of studying, and they just hit a wall in their elementary studies that they're never able to get past because they don't have basic study skills. And I see this all the time in students whose parents are trying to push them into academic subjects, and the kids can't write sentences. It's never going to work. But if you focus on the basic skills and the standards for quality of work and drill these standards into your children and hold them accountable to them, and again, I'll always reinforce this from my side, they'll learn how to get the work done on their own. They'll learn what it feels like to study the right way. They'll know what it feels like when an assignment is going to get a perfect score. And once they learn that, and that becomes their own intellectual culture, they're going to begin to be able to study independently, and that is when they're going to begin to make real progress. The goal for a parent in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy is to help the child become more and more capable of communicating directly with me in his or her studies, so that the focus of the studies is on the content of the lessons and not on basic skills, grammar, and things like that. These are things within the reach of all homeschooling parents, especially if you enroll your children in the English grammar and composition courses. Go through those courses with the children, and as you learn each concept, again, don't just learn the concept and move to the next lesson. Learn the concept and then hold the children accountable to that concept in all of their written work. That's how you can use the grammar courses and the composition course to help your children with the basic study skills without which they'll never be able to make academic progress. So I hope that's a helpful set of recommendations for homeschool parents. I have these conversations with my wife every day as I try to help her understand what she should do and what she shouldn't do with the children. I'm often interrupting her discussions with the children to tell my boys to leave mom alone and do their work, because the boys are content to just sit there and make mom do it for them. And mom has to know where to draw the line and say, no, that's your responsibility. And I hope that this talk helps parents to draw the line and understand the difference between helping your children as a homeschool parent and actually being taken advantage of by your children who are being lazy and who are not doing their part of their academic work. I have no doubt that you, the parent, can complete these assignments, but these assignments are not for you. These assignments are for your children. And your children have to learn that their progress and their grades are their responsibility. And working together, we can help teach them that. And again, this isn't to punish the children. This isn't just to make the children miserable. This is to help the children in the long run to achieve the most possible progress and learning by being strict with specific things, strict with simple principles of moral behavior and of academic quality in the work that they do. So I hope that's helpful. As I said, if you have any questions or want to get into these things in more practical, specific detail, I'm happy to do that. Just post questions on the forums, and I'll either answer them directly on the forums, or if I see that a good topic is opened up that requires a bit of explanation, I'll simply do another talk on those topics, and then I'll link to those talks when I respond to your questions on the forum. So let's work together in these things. You do your job as the homeschool parent, help the kids with the quality of their daily work, and I'll do my job on the other side and help you ensure that your children are learning the content, mastering the lessons, and moving forward with real academic progress. God bless your studies.